Hello, and thanks for stopping by. This is another Odoo tutorial, and I'm Joe Pryor. Today we're talking about relationships in Odoo and how you manage subordinate entities. Before we really get into managing subordinate entities, we should talk a little bit about what exactly an entity is in Odoo. Odoo is a relational database. It's a lot like every other CRM, Salesforce, for example, or SQL. And it's essentially just a system which tracks several different kinds of records. Now, a record is a contact. A record is an opportunity. When you're typing in the country that a record or a contact lives in, and you start typing, for example, Australia, you probably won't get past AUS before it asks if you mean Australia. Somewhere in Odoo, there's a table of every country on the planet, and that's another record. And that's a way that Odoo pulls in that information from somewhere else. How we manage those relationships and track their development, that's where the magic that Odoo produces occurs. So let's get a little bit deeper into how those relationships work and how they work in Odoo specifically. We need to talk a bit about relationship types before we go further. Odoo is predominantly built on one-to-many and many-to-many relationships, but the most simple relationship to establish is the one-to-one relationship. And essentially it says that one entity will only ever relate to one other entity on a different table. So the example here, I pulled these from lectures when I was in grad school, but they do a pretty good job of establishing what we're looking at. One student, Sophie Tang, has a unique student identification number, and that unique student ID number can be used, and you'll see here it's all over the slides, to reference back to this one specific table, Sophie Tang's table, every time. And in a one-to-one relationship, that ID number will only ever link to one other entity on one other table. And so for here, we have Sophie's contact information, for example. And you can see this exactly applying in Odoo when you have personal contacts or even company contacts. Now, we as users don't tend to see the unique identification number, but it exists on the back end. There is a unique ID created for every contact. And whether they're companies or whether they're person, they're given unique ID numbers. We don't see them, we don't interact with them, but they're there. The next relationship type we're going to talk about is the one-to-many relationship. And this is one table having multiple entries in other tables. Now, again, we have the same example here. One customer, Sophie Tang, can have multiple orders. For example, Sophie might have bought multiple things from eBay or multiple things from Amazon or whatever. You get the idea that these individual orders, think of it like a receipt. When you order a thing on Amazon, it generates for you a receipt or a unique order record that, let's say it's broken when it gets to you and you need to contact Amazon for a refund or to return it or an exchange. They're going to ask you for a receipt number or a record number. Well, that record number refers to a specific purchase that you made, but you personally have probably made lots of purchases. I personally have made plenty of purchases on Amazon. And so that unique order is a unique entity, but you as a customer are tied to all kinds of orders. And if you're anything like me, on Amazon, a lot of orders. And the most complicated one, but also I think the most prevalent and often the most useful, especially when it comes to Odoo, is the many-to-many relationship here. Now, the table that we're most interested in is the one in the center, and this refers to enrollments across the entirety of a university campus. And you'll see on the right, they have a table discussing all of the classes that university offers, and then on the left, they have a table referencing all of the students. And so the combination of one student and their classes that they're enrolled in generates an enrollment ID, because each class, there's 100, 200, 300 classes that a college offers on its campus, and they've got a couple hundred students as well, or maybe 1,000. But there's only one unique combination of that one student and their classes. And the nice thing about this as well is you can also use this table, if you were a university administrator, to look at all of the classes and then figure out which students are enrolled in each class. So which 20 or 30 students are assigned to, information systems 550 or, whatever. So these entities exist in any relational database. Now, here I've used examples for school, but you can change student ID to customer ID. You can change enrollments to invoices or purchase orders. You get the idea. This applies to a business just as well. And classes could be products, inventory, practice areas, you name it. Now, we're not building a SQL database in Odoo, but we are building building relationships between entities in Odoo. Let's use a company in Odoo as an example, Merck. So Merck is a company that we have multiple relationships with in different countries. Then their headquarters is located in, I want to say, New Jersey, and we have a contact there. And so underneath Merck has a one-to-many relationship with all of its subordinate entities. Underneath Merck are people that work at that headquarters location. And then underneath Merck are also other locations that are subordinate to Merck headquarters or Merck Global. So Merck has a location in Boston and in Germany and in Egypt that we have connections with. They probably have more. They have a relationship with an office in Singapore, but I couldn't fit 4 on this slide and make it legible. So we get 3. Each of those 4 or 3 locations all have people working at them. And those people predominantly work at Merck Boston or Merck Germany or Merck Egypt. And each of these locations, Boston, Germany, and Egypt, they can all make their own purchases that are separate from Merck Global. But ultimately, it will all tie back to Merck Global as our big customer, as the big purchasing agent. So let's show that in Odoo. So in Odoo, we can create subordinate entities underneath Merck headquarters or Merck Global. And you have Merck Serrano in Merck Egypt, Merck Germany, Merck Singapore, etc. And you also have Will Gill, who works at Merck headquarters. This essentially mirrors what we've created here as this table, but in Odoo. And what's great about this is Germany, the Germany location, let's say Birgit Roth is buying something from us. And that purchase order or that opportunity in the CRM application can tie specifically back to Merck Germany, but it will also roll up to the parent entity, Merck. And we'll show that to you in the system here in just a second. So let's get out of the PowerPoint and let's go over to Odoo. See you in a second. Okay, so we're here in Odoo, and I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of example companies and a couple of example opportunities to illustrate how subordinate relationships work and how they roll up to the parent company. Now, in order to save time, I'm going to skip over most of the actual typing, but I am going to show you the process, and we'll also, of course, take a look at the end result. So the first thing that we have to do is, in the process, is create your contact. It's generally best to make the contact first before making your opportunity. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we've created example company, and they're headquartered in France. They're the parent that everything is going to flow from. So let's go ahead and create some subordinate people and some subordinate locations. To do that, still in the save or in the edit tab of this contact card, look at the bottom down here under contacts and addresses. We should go ahead and add a new entity. It'll create this pop-up box. It looks pretty similar to the contact card over here, and you're creating a new one. So if you want to create a person, click on contact. If you want to create another location, stay here on the other address. Okay, so we finished creating, for our purposes anyway, a second location that is part of Example Co. Now, obviously, if you're doing this for a real company, you should fill out as much of this stuff as you have, but for the purposes of our illustration, we don't need it right now. If you want to close the opportunity or close it right now, click on Save and Close. That will save this entity and close the dialog. But if you want to keep going, or if you have multiple contacts you want to enter, click on Save and New. And what it will do is we'll save this one and open a brand new instance of the Create Contact dialog. So let's do that. Okay, so we've created our locations. You'll notice, however, that Example Co. Mexico and Example Co. United States are both listed as people. And unfortunately, the default seems to be that it will always make individuals rather than locations or companies. But we can fix that by going into their individual cards. We've also created Alan Pierre, who's the EVP for sales in Europe, and he is attached to Example Co. in France. So let's save this, and we go back to the contact screen, and now we need to search for example, just to kind of limit the amount of things that we're seeing. Already, we'll have the opportunity to, for example, group by country, and now you can take a look at what the entities are, or which entities exist in where in the world. If you want to fix some of the problems with Example Co. Mexico, go into the edit, make it a company. You'll still see that it's part of the broader overall company, Example Co. headquarters. And while we're here, let's go ahead and add a new employee. So this is a contact, and that employee is going to be Maria Sorosa, and they're attached at the Mexico location. We're going to go ahead and get save and close. And mostly because we only need to have a couple of examples here for you to establish kind of, the workflow that we're trying to do here. So we have Example Co. Mexico, back to contacts, and now we have a person directly under the Mexican location, but they'll still also report as part of Example Co. in its entirety. Let's go to the US location and fix my typo. And then let's go ahead and create two new people who work at the US location. Okay, we've created two new people who work at the US location, and why I'm going to do this in a second, you'll understand. We have Melissa Johansson, the Director of Development, and we have Doug Francis, who's the CFO for the company. All right, let's go back to the parent organization. Okay, so as you can see, we've got all the different entities that belong to Example Company, and you can group them by country to get a better idea of where they all belong. So Example Co. headquarters in France has Alan Pierre, Maria Sorosa, and Doug Francis and Melissa Johansson. They all report up to their parent company, but they're all still part of Example Company. So when we go into Example Company Mexico, you see that it is associated with Example Company headquarters. And if we go back to Example Co. US, it's also part of Example Company headquarters. Now, what we can also do is we can make some changes after they've been created. For example, let's say that Doug Francis gets transferred to France. He moves to the headquarters. He is the CFO after all. It's better if he's close to the CEO. So we can go into Doug, we can edit him, and we can say that he's actually associated with Example Co. headquarters. Now you're going to get an error. It says changing a company contact should be done. It was never done correctly. If an existing contact starts working for a new company, that new contact should be created under that new company. We can use discard to abandon if you want to, but we're moving someone laterally within the same company. So we're just going to go ahead and click OK, and we're going to save it. And then we go back to the main screen, and now Doug Francis works at the headquarters because he's moved to France. Au revoir, Doug. So let's go ahead and create some contacts or some opportunities now for Example Company to illustrate the next part of this. So we're in the CRM, and we're going to go ahead and create a couple of example opportunities. Now don't worry, I'm going to delete all this stuff, so the reporting shouldn't be wrong. Our first opportunity is going to be some new business in France. So we're going to try and do that business with Example Co. in headquarters in France. And because we know Doug from our time here in the US, we hope we can go ahead and work with him. When you're creating an opportunity, notice how a lot of this stuff pops up. All your contacts that already exist pop up. That's excellent. You'll also have the opportunity to click on some pre-filled ones from their search system. We do not want to use these because they create new entities. And you don't want to create an edit because you've already done all this. So we're going to go ahead and click Doug Francis. It's better if we have a specific person in mind at a company than just a company. And let's say that this is an opportunity worth $100,000. All right. So we edit it. We add it. We're going to go ahead and create another one. Okay. And so for this, we're going to go ahead and say how I can spell example correctly. We know that Maria is our person to contact in that area, and that's worth $150,000. Add. All right, so we've got two opportunities, and this, for the purposes of our illustration now, we have all we need, okay? First things first, if you type example company on the customer, both of those will come up, and you can do the thing before. You can filter by country. You'll see that they report back to their individual countries. Let's go back to contacts. And let's search for Example Company again. Now, This is the exciting part. This is the thing that I think is fantastic about the subordinate entities. Doug Francis, these little star icons here represent an opportunity. So if you click on that, you'll go to the new business in France opportunity we just created for Doug. Let's go back to contacts. Same idea for the new business in Mexico under Maria. If you go to the parent company all the way up to the top of that relationship, you go to Example Co., you'll see that you have two opportunities. And those two opportunities are the two that we've just created. Those two opportunities are these right here, new business in Mexico and new business in France. And they both show up. They both roll up. And so when you're doing reporting, you're trying to figure out what revenue is being attracted to which customer, even though it's happening at the Mexican level or at the French level and not at the US level, it's all rolling up to the top of the company. And the top of the company here still has all these cards. It still has the two people that are associated directly with it at a location level and their two subordinate companies. And then you go to the individual companies and they have their people, Maria for the Mexico location, and it looks like, I think just Melissa still for the US. So this establishes this hierarchy. Everything reports up to example company headquarters and then the two employees that move or work there. And then you have the subordinate entities underneath them. In the list view, I like this too, because then you see they're all grouped together, example company headquarters, and then alphabetically by employee, example company Mexico, alphabetically by employee. So a better example of this is Symphony. We have a lot of people in there, obviously, and you can see all of our people. You can see all of our people that are attached at the location level. So our Panama guys have been really good about attaching themselves, and a lot of folks attached to the global or the North American headquarters. So the more granularity that we get by attaching ourselves or our contacts to regionally appropriate parent entities or subordinate entities allows us to get a lot more granular in terms of the detail. And the important part, the excellent the last piece I'll end on is, let's keep on with example. So who's the salesperson? For all of these is going to be me right now because I created them. But maybe the relationship in the U.S. is owned by Jeff. Jeff West he owns the relationship in the U.S. All right. So he's the relationship owner for the U.S., but he's not the relationship owner for the Mexican location. The Mexican location, the relationship owner is Herman, who is handling all of our great business in Latin America. And so he's the one attached there. Then when we roll up to the French location, it's going to be Yasser. Yasser handles, headquarters is, yeah. When we get to the U.S., but when we get to the U.S. location, that's going to be Larry Williams. Larry does a lot of great work for the source to pay. And so example company needed some source to pay work, and Larry was the guy who kind of made that happen. And so now we have the opportunity to see at a granular level who owns what location where. And maybe the Mexico location is run by Herman, but Maria is a contact from Hector. So you have the opportunity to really zoom in and see a lot of detail as to who knows what person, who's related to what organization, or who owns, who's the point of contact of record for that particular person. So as with every database, the golden rule is garbage in, garbage out. We've really got to make sure we're putting good data in our database, because the more granular and detailed and fine we get with this data entry, the more useful this system's going to be. So I hope that's been a really good primer on subordinate entities and how they all kind of relate together. So as a quick wrap up, everything wraps up to example company headquarters. All the opportunities all filter up here, and then their subordinate locations, example co Mexico and example co US, they act as their own parent for their grandchildren, so to speak. As a quick wrap up, we've seen that everything ultimately filters back up to example co, the headquarters location, the 2 employees and their subordinate locations. Now, the subordinate locations can act as independent entities. Example co Mexico can make purchases on its own, and we can track those sales specifically for the Latin American market or specifically for the Mexican market. But they will also trickle up to example co by France. And again, you can get that reporting at a granular level this way by grouping by country, or you can filter. There's certain filters you can look for. And the same thing in the CRM application. If we look at examples, we can filter that by country as well. We can filter that by sales team. Yeah. So we can filter that by country as well. And you'll see here we have an opportunity in France and an opportunity in Mexico. And the more detail we get, the better. We have a point of contact for these. That's me, but I can change that too. You can edit here and change who the salesperson is. So if I'm entering it on behalf of, for example, Aiden Rivera, I can just select them as the salesperson for this particular opportunity. So thanks for watching. I know that this has gotten a little long, but subordinate entities and the management of those kinds of relationships are very important to efficiently running this kind of a system. So thanks for sticking it out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. We're discovering some exciting stuff about Odoo every day, and I am continuing to make these training videos to hopefully make the system seem as approachable as possible. Thanks again. I'm Joe Pryor. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.